All right, let's go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ana Nolan. I work as part of the Auxiliares de Conversación group with Esther and Rebecca and Raquel. We're going to have our last session today of these terrific third-year workshops that we've been hosting. And as always, we hope that they're interesting and useful for you. And I'll pass it along to Claire, who's been working closely with everyone. Go ahead, Claire.
Hello, good afternoon. Nice to see everybody again. For those of you that haven't been along during the week, then these workshops are being done by third-year better students who have been working since November with me, getting these classes together, because the idea at first was to do a voluntary session for a school in March, but because of the coronavirus situation that we've got, then that had to be cancelled. So as not to put good work to waste, we've decided to present this to the coordinators and teachers because it is very good work, and they have been preparing this for a while. So today's sessions are going to be done by Kefra, Sean, and Fayola. Now then, yes, I'm glad to see you there, Fayola, because she just sent me a message to say that her Wi-Fi is up and down and she didn't know whether she was going to be here or not. So keep fingers crossed that you're going to stay with us till the end, okay? So, so we're going to move over now to Kefra, who's going to, well, I'm not sure what Kefra's going to do exactly today, so perhaps she'd like to fill us in.
Hi, Kefra. I think you're still on mute. If you kind of wiggle your little mouse on the bottom of the screen, a little menu will pop up on the bottom and you'll see the mute button on the bottom. Let's see.
Okay, yeah, the problem with this setup is that the toolbar keeps popping up. It's blocking my muting abilities. It won't let me be great. So, but can everyone hear me? Yes, no?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, awesome. So I'm going to get started. What I'm presenting is basically, well, the title is called Deaf Poetry Jam. Side title, Languages Through Music. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I like to do with this is start with an introduction, and the presentation will be the introduction. So, Deaf Poetry Jam, aka Slam Poetry 101. Working title, This Ain't Your Mama's Poetry Class. As you can see, we're not going off on Cambridge English here. I will explain. Key points. Normally I work in a secondary school with first of ESO through Segundo De Bachata. This is a more advanced class, so this is going to be for fourth of ESO through Segundo De Bachata. It can be adapted for online use, and it's a 50-minute class. Now here's the thing, this is going to be a minimum of 2 classes. I say 2 to 4, it can go up to 6. It depends on level of English and enthusiasm, because if they hate it, why would I make them do it 6 times? Regardless of level, there is a role for everyone. That means everyone gets to participate. I have several students who are older who don't understand much English, but they work and they try. So I wanted to make a place for everyone. Students will learn things like AAVE. If you are not familiar with that term, AAVE stands for African American Vernacular English. It is a dialect of English used by, well, African Americans. Black people. So along with that, you will learn a lot of slang and wordplay that can be used in the next lesson, the continuing lesson, which is a rap battle, actually. If we were still in school right now, my Segundo De Bachata would be working on their final presentations, which was a rap battle. And as you can guess, yes, the final class is a rap battle. So I introduced this with the question, what is poetry? I ask, what comes to mind when you hear the word poetry? What are we taught when it comes to poetry? What faces do you see? What personas normally represent poetry? And then I ask them, who do you think of and why? Now, a little test I do a Google search for great poets in history. As you can see on the presentation, that's exactly what I did, and then say, I'll do it for you. And this still is actually from last night, so it's very recent. So, great poets in history. The question is, whose history? Whose history are we talking about? So I ask, do they see a pattern? Is there anything that interests you? Because, for example, Shakespeare, the bard, he's the OG of poetry. I studied Shakespeare, that's my major. But, next question, do I see myself in Shakespeare? Occasionally, but not always. So then I pose the question, is this the face of poetry? Is this what poetry represents? Is this what poetry looks like to you? And in my not so humble opinion, no, it is not. For me, poetry is multifaceted. It comes in different colors, shapes, styles, ages. You can see a 12-year-old boy doing a poetry slam, as well as the Black Panthers, or Langston Hughes, whose poem, Dreams, hold fast to dreams, for if dreams die, life is a broken winged bird that cannot fly. The first poem I learned as a 5-year-old child. So poetry goes through the ages, and it doesn't just have one look. So, what is poetry? It's more than pretty language in a textbook. Like I said, love Shakespeare, but poetry is also a voice. It's a voice for the unheard, the voice of activism, culture, poverty, suffering, chaos, survival, and my personal favorite, rage. Now, don't get me wrong, they will also learn that poetry can be pretty, of course. It's about romance, joy, ecstasy. You've read Neruda, right? That's all he talks about some of the time. So my quest is to get my students to broaden their horizons in the Deaf Poetry Jam. And that is the end of the intro presentation. So if you're still with me, we are going to come back and I will stop sharing my screen. Haha. Now, the poetry project. This can be done in pairs or groups. It's to introduce them to slam poetry outside of Wordsworth, Yeats, and Browning. So we explore poets from the US, Latin America, and even Spain, known for racy takes on subjects. So students will be able to multitask and take on more than one role. I use music to set the atmosphere, so they learn key terms like rhythm, flow, delivery, cadence. For me, one of the most important, mood, nuance, and tone. If they're in groups, there will be 4 people to a group, if possible. One is the poet, the other is the scribe. You'll have a translator, and of course, the performers. The poet analyzes, writes texts. They can add, replace, or improvise as they see fit. If they don't want to do that, I have a list of poets that they can choose from. Things like Maya Angelou, Pablo Neruda, Gabriel Garcia Lorca, Gil Scott-Heron, Victoria Santa Cruz, or Cesar Vallejo, for example. The scribe is responsible for recording the group's thoughts, the impressions, as they work together to analyze the text. Then you have the translator, self-explanatory. He works with the language, figures out slang, and tries to find similarities in their own language. The performers, also self-explanatory, they'll perform. Now, not everyone wants to perform. I get that. Not everyone likes to perform. I get that, which is why there are other roles. but they are also welcome to perform as groups, with each person delivering different lines, different parts. And that way they could use their perception of flow, delivery, tone, and try to make a group dynamic to give a killer slam poetry set. Lower levels. This can also work for lower levels. Now, I'm not a complete whip cracker when it comes to language. This works best in pairs. I really see the most success with one upper level student and one lower level student. They are allowed to present a Spanish language poet, but they must work on their own to translate the lines, and both must go up. They'll have to do 2 poems. And the way it works is they take turns going back and forth, reading and reciting. For example, if they take a Neruda poem, the first paragraph or 5 sets of lines, they can read person one, let's call him person A. Person A will read the first 5 lines in Spanish. Then person B will read the English translation until they work through the poem. But then they have to switch. And then person A will be doing English and person B will be doing Spanish. This way they work together to create a group dynamic, and you have the upper level helping the lower level, and maybe the other way around. So that's a good way to help get over their shyness when it comes to the language, that famous vergüenza that we always hear about. And that way they have someone stronger to help them through it. Because I don't think anyone should not be able to participate just because they feel that they can't. I want everyone to be included. I want everyone to be involved. Then the last performance, the final, they'll get a dress rehearsal. When performing on the final day, like I said, I will have music playing in the background. I like to set a mood. It's all about mood. I've got everything from Erykah Badu to Jill Scott, Floetry, The Roots in the background to create an atmosphere and kind of help them get more comfortable with being in front of all of us. Each group or pair will have a small introduction of their poet with a short backstory. Just tell us a little about who you chose and why, what you know about them, and what you can teach us about them. They will recite their poem in a way of their choosing. They're going to show us what they have. And then at the end, we can ask questions. Why you chose this poet? Why did you choose this poem? What spoke to you? What was the most important line to you? What does that mean to you? And that way you can have a little interaction with the audience, the classmates, and the actual performers. So it gets a group dynamic where everyone is speaking. And that way everyone has time and everyone will be supporting each other when it comes to that activity. So that is the Deaf Poetry Jam. Now, I forgot to mention the next one, Rap Battle, the continuance of the Deaf Poetry Jam. If this is successful, and if the students work with it and they like it, when their grasp of flow, lyricism, cadence, delivery, mood is sufficient, if they're advanced enough and enthusiastic enough, then it goes from poetry to rap, which is the languages through music section. And they'll do the same parts, but this time they have to rap. They have to write and try to create a rap. And in the final class, they're going to have a rap battle where they will learn important things about wordplay, lyricism, roasting. But the whole dynamic is for them to enjoy it and have fun. So I think that is the Deaf Poetry Slam, Deaf Poetry Jam. So does anyone have any questions?
No? Great. Good. Thank you so much, Kefra. That was great. Really good. Yeah, really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much.
It was really nice. Yeah, you can see you're
Awesome.
really enthusiastic about it, and I'm sure it goes really well in class. That's great.
Right
Good.
on.
Thank you. Right,
Thank you.
so now we're going to go over to Sean. Sean, is ready for his speed dating, I think.
Yes.
So,
yes.
yeah, I'm intrigued. Great.
All right. Can everyone hear me? Okay, great. So good afternoon, everyone. Like Claire said, my name is Sean Saxon. I also work with secondary students, and today's presentation or topic is on a lesson plan that I've been doing for a few years called speed dating, which, you know, shouldn't take a genius to figure out what we're going to be talking about today. And much like Kefra, I also target this lesson to the second cycle of ESO, so typically fourth of ESO or first and second of Bachiller. I find it works better with students who are a little bit older. And this lesson I designed for a B2 level, but you could certainly make it more challenging if you needed, or even maybe like a B1 plus. And so this lesson is designed, I typically do it on or around Valentine's Day in February, as one of the holidays we often talk about. And I find this lesson to be a little bit more fun once you know your students a little bit better and have, you know, a few months under your belt knowing their personalities. So for this class, I've divided the presentation into 3 sections. The class, I am imagining a 50-minute class. You would have around a 10-minute warm-up, 30 minutes for the activity, and then another 10 minutes to do maybe a plenary session at the end, and, you know, clean up and get ready for the next class. So before we start speed dating, with the warm-up, I think the way I've done it before is to do 2 mini activities. The first would be called the perfect partner. You know, very common vocabulary topics in ESO and Bachiller are personality. And so have students work in pairs to elicit either phrases or adjectives to describe their ideal partner. So things we worked with this year in 4th of ESO: outgoing, has a good sense of humor, generous, things like that. So let students work in pairs for 2 or 3 minutes, and then you can elicit those on the board and put them together, and then maybe offer some more advanced structures depending on the level you're teaching. As a part, you know, away from just one-word adjectives, but more set phrases that we might use in English. And then on the opposite, you know, have students then continue to work in pairs to think of the 4 worst qualities to have in a partner. So selfish or lazy, someone who's always late, someone who's bossy, someone who's maybe too serious. And so you can have both positive and you know, negative adjectives on the board. And so again, I would leave maybe the novel vocabulary or maybe novel structures on the board for students to be able to reference during the activity. And then the second part of the warm-up would be, I would write on the board, how do people meet, which I find interesting to see what they have to say. You know, okay, you know, you're in high school. You know, how does someone meet someone they may want to go out with? Is it summer camp? Is it, you know, maybe a school exchange? Is it through school itself? I one year had a student say, your friends, brothers and sisters. And I was like, well, you know, not if you want to stay friends for very long. But so that can be kind of funny sometimes to think how do they meet, how they think they can meet, you know, maybe a romantic partner. And then, you know, oftentimes things we work on in conversation classes are giving opinions. And then so maybe 2 or 3 minutes elicit from students the pros and cons of each way, you know, the classic on one hand, on the other hand, one advantages, things like that, just to kind of get them thinking. And then moving into the main activity, speed dating itself. Ask the students if they've ever heard of speed dating. Usually maybe 1 or 2 has, and ask if they can explain it to their class in English. And then, you know, I would clarify if it wasn't exactly explained correctly and say, you know, speed dating is where you go to maybe a bar or a place and there's equal numbers of participants and you have a set amount of time with a person, then you'll rotate through. So then comes the fun part. You have them clear their desks and then I like to have the classroom where they turn their rows facing each other. So you maybe have like 2 sets of rows so students are facing each other throughout the classroom. And then I have a printout of around 20 different questions that you might find at a typical speed dating. So, and this is a really good chance to practice them having natural conversations, as well as you can work on whatever grammar topics you've been studying. So this is a really good time to do to use future tenses, second or third and mixed conditionals, narration in the past. So some of the questions I have are, what would you like to do for your work? Where are you from? What is the most important thing you value in a relationship? So that's, positive qualities we talked about earlier. What do you do for fun? What is your most treasured possession? So maybe give them some new vocabulary. What's your favorite kind of music, or who's your favorite singer? How do you like to spend your spare time? Do you believe that the glass is half empty or half full? And so maybe some of these expressions we would work on together first. So saying, an expression in English for an optimist or a pessimist. And so there are around 20 questions on the sheet. And then explain, depending on how long you would like to do it. I usually do a minute and a half to 2 minutes for students to be in pairs. That way they can kind of cycle through. And you can put a timer on the board, and every 2 minutes you'll explain, half the class will switch and move to the desk next to them. And then this is when the magic / chaos begins, is because you start the timer and they can see it. And I've really found that even students who usually don't speak find this activity to be pretty fun. And so you or I or the two teachers, we can walk around and monitor language or ask follow-up questions, and then after 2 minutes switch, half the class will get up and move one seat down, so on and so forth, until I usually let it run for about 30 minutes. Depending on how you see it going in class, you can let it go a little bit longer or cut it a little bit short. But I typically find that students really like this activity and they think it's fun. And it's very entertaining to watch as well, and hear some of the things that they say. Then, for the last 10 minutes of class, you kind of try to calm everyone down, get the desk back into rows. And then I have 2 or 3 follow-up questions I like to ask at the end. Always, what did you like about this activity? Was it easy or difficult? Why? And elicit opinions. Would you ever like to try this activity again? Why or why not? And then this third question I wrote many weeks ago before our current situation, which was, do you think it's easier for people to meet face-to-face or online nowadays? That's kind of a sad reality out of the moment during quarantine, but we have to imagine this was a pre-quarantine activity. And so it kind of gets them thinking and able to reflect. Again, like I said, I think this activity works well with the older students. I think anything younger than 4th, they're kind of silly or goofy, and they don't quite take it as seriously. But that's the activity. So I'm happy to send anyone the lesson or the questions. I find that it works very well in one class period. It's often really fun to do at the end of the week, because they don't really have to think, and it doesn't involve them writing anything down. And I find that I've had really good participation whenever I've done it. So I don't know if anyone has any questions or would like to know a little bit more, or has any thoughts they'd like to share, but that's what I had prepared for today. Yeah. Of course, at the end of the meeting, I'd be happy to get in touch with you by email. If you ever want to message me or want the lesson plan, I'd be happy to reach out. So thanks for listening.
Okay, I don't know what happened to Claire. Maybe she accidentally got dropped off. But let's see. We have one more person. I believe it was Fayola. Is that right? That was really some interesting work, honestly, Sean. Have you found that a lot of your students have heard of speed dating, or no?
Usually maybe 1 or 2 have, and they've seen it from a scene in a movie or something like that.
Okay.
I adapted this lesson from something I found on Film English that involves starting the class with a little clip, but I didn't think it added a ton to the lesson. but they really get into it. And, if you really want to set that, you can, put on some classic love songs in the background, some Barry White or something, but you can
set the mood a little bit.
you can definitely have more fun with it than they're having, which I believe you should always be doing. But no, it's a fun activity. Yeah.
That's great. It's a creative idea. I don't know if I've ever heard that, that kind of activity before. So it's really unique. All right. Well, thank you very much, Sean.
No problem.
All right, Fayola, I guess you're next. You're our last but not least. We have Fayola going to do the last session here.
Okay, so I need to share my screen, yes? Okay.
Yeah, I'm not seeing you quite yet. Let's see.
Okay, yeah. No. Can you see me? Sorry, I'm trying to share my screen. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great.
I
Perfect.
can't see anything quite yet, but hopefully everyone else can see the presentation. Can you guys verify if you can see a presentation? Because I don't.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
So as I said, my name is Fayola, and I teach from infantile to upper secondary. And this activity that I'm going to present today is mostly for fourth of ESO, and it's called, I like to do activities that is based on game shows. And this activity helps them to practice relative clauses. So you can do it as an activity after you have taught relative clauses in the classroom. So what is pyramid? Pyramid is a word guessing activity, and it's based on an American TV show. And so it's used to help, as I said before, help them practice the use of relative clauses. So all the categories in the game are relative clauses. It depends on your student's level and fluency, but it's mostly for fourth of ESO, or you can make it more difficult for upper secondary. So I like to always start by showing them a clip of the actual game show from Friends. And what this does is makes them get excited about it, because fourth of ESO is really hard to impress them. And it also shows them how not to play the game. So I'm going to play that video for you now. Okay, so after showing that video, then we talk about the rules of the game. So how do you play pyramid, and what do you need? First of all, you would need a projector, and of course a laptop, and the template of the game. Or you can, if there isn't any technology in your classroom, you can have your categories and your words on a paper. So you can simply give the student the words that they need to describe on a laminated paper or just a card. You also need the whiteboard where you can draw the pyramid on the board and a timer. I suggest each round you can time it depending again on your student's level. I usually give them 60 seconds to guess 7 words in round 1 and 90 seconds to describe a category in round 2, which I'm going to explain further now. So how do you play round 1? So the objective of round 1 is to describe 7 words related to a category within a time limit. So what do? You divide your class into 2 teams, or you can make it 3, but usually 2 teams, and it'll get them more competitive. It's easier to manage with 2 teams. And then a player from a team, say team A, they would come in front of the classroom, they would sit on a chair with their back turned, facing the class, so they can see what's projected, the words projected in the back of them. And so a player from the team would give them clues to help guess the word on the card or the word on the projector. The players given the clues cannot use their hands, so it's like similar to taboo, so no gestures. And of course, no root words are allowed. So if you're describing the word headache, you cannot use the word head or ache. And so each correctly guessed word, you get 1 point. And at the end, the team with the most words guessed correctly would be the winner. So this is what the PowerPoint template looks like if you're using the PowerPoint template. So I have 6 categories, and I like to use suggestive titles. So they're not really sure what the category is. It's kind of vague. And it's only when the player chooses a category, then I will tell them what they need to describe. So for example, it will say, okay, born in the USA. I would then tell them, okay, describe for your partner things that are typically American. Pair work. They would have to describe things that comes in pairs. I've got your number. Describe things or objects that have numbers on them. Scared stiff. Describe things that people are afraid of. Shh, the baby is sleeping. Describe words that begin with SH. Chilling out. Describe things found in the refrigerator. So each team would take turns picking a category. And then I try to have not the same people describing the words and guessing the words. So you change. So each time you change the 2 players who are describing and guessing the word. So this is how it would look if you're using a word card or a category card. You can simply give the student the card with the words that they need to describe, or these are the words that will be projected on the screen. And at any time, a player can, if they're having difficulties describing a word, for example, let's say milk, then they can say pass. And as long as time permits, they can always come back to that word in the category. So these are examples of the words that they're going to describe. You can make it as hard as easy, depending again on the level of the student. Okay. And so at the end of this first round, the team with, of course, who gets the most points, they go into a bonus round where the objective is different. Now you have to describe the category. Guess the category, that is. So before you were describing words in a category. Now the objective is to describe what is the category. So again, the team is going to have to describe things related to that category. So this is how it looks. So now you have the category, and you have to have the person who's sitting in the chair to say what the category is. So for example, words that end in TION. So the person who is given the clues can say, for example, I'm found in a dictionary, nation, communication, population, pollution. to get the person who is guessing to say words that end in tion. People who work with children, they can say, I'm a teacher, I'm a doctor, I'm a coach. Get them to say people who work with children, and so forth. For example, food that you eat with a spoon, they can say soup, yogurt, cereal. So they can, of course, guess food that you eat with a spoon. How can we modify this for online? Simply, if you're doing it online via Zoom or any other platform, you can send the word or the category in a private chat to the person who is describing the word. So they're the only one who would know what the words are. And you as a teacher, of course, you'll be the moderator. You'll be the one who would be keeping the time, track of the time, of course, and as well if the word is correct. You can also you can use this as vocabulary pyramid for the lower levels, not really about relative clauses. So you can have like a pyramid drawn on the board the same way and have like unit categories in their book. For example, places in town, food, the body, sports, hobbies, and you have the words you describe under that category. For example, places in town, you can have a hospital, post office, food, can be anything. Or you can also play as well, guess the category only. So you're not guessing the 7 words in the category, but you're going to only play this part of the game, where they will get more practice in speaking and practicing relative clauses. And that would be it for my presentation. I'm not sure if anyone has any questions. Yeah. Any questions?
Thank you, Fayola. That was great.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm back again. I disappeared. I'm sorry about that. My computer froze. It had to restart. And I'm sorry, Sean. I missed the end of your presentation, and I missed the beginning of yours, Fayola.
It's okay.
Yeah.
All right, don't worry.
Anyway, yes, it's been a great afternoon. Really some nice interesting things that we've learned as well. And I'd like to say personally, thank you for all your hard work, and also thank everybody for all your work as well. This thing has been great. Good. Lots of horrible feedback on my microphone. Okay. So, well, I think we're going to leave it at that now, and I'll pass back to Anna. Thank you.
Thanks, Claire. If everyone can make sure that your mics are muted once again. All right. Yeah, great presentation overall. Claire, I know you've been working with everyone, and I've missed a few days of some of the sessions. But what I have been able to see has been really creative. So, I'm happy for you guys. I'm happy to be working with you as well next year. As you know, if you're renewing with us, then I'll be working alongside you to do the 4-year presentations as well as part of the workshop. So I will be in contact soon, and thank you for everyone for tuning in. And of course, this is being recorded, so you can always ask us for any videos that you would like to see later on. All right. Everyone have a great afternoon. And once again, thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.